So when I see a new movie starring Adam Driver, I definitely give it a closer look. And this one looked interesting, a bit strange but interesting. However, the name of the director didn't ring any bells to me. Until I looked up his previous films, and turns out he's the man behind the movie Holy Motors. Which, if you're unfamiliar with, is a film that exists and is very difficult to describe. But that kind of just further piqued my interest and also set up my expectations for this one. I knew that the chances were pretty high that we were gonna get a strange movie. And we do. In fact, it takes about 30 seconds before an invisible narrator asks us to hold our breaths until the show is over. Which is kind of an unusual request and one that's sort of impossible to fulfill. But then we get into the actual film, and the intro sequence is a musical number filmed in one take. But that scene doesn't appear to accomplish very much or even set up the story or what's going on here. In fact, it's more or less completely unrelated to the rest of the film, which is definitely a choice. So this one was off to a strange start. However, things got a little bit more coherent after that. Because as it turns out, while this is very much a musical, it does still have a clear narrative. And the story here follows a couple, played by Adam Driver and Marion Cotillard. Driver plays a stand-up comedian and Cotillard a famous opera singer. And without getting into too much details here, the story eventually does revolve around their daughter too, Annette, hence the title. However, the first large chunk of the movie focuses mostly on the couple and their respective careers as well. And there's of course some drama there and some trials and tribulations. Now, as I said, there is a clear narrative here. It's also fairly easy to follow, but it is a very strange movie nonetheless. Things get a bit out there, if you will. And the fact that this is a musical just adds to the bizarre nature of the film. Because there are obviously a ton of musical numbers throughout, but not only that. Virtually every piece of dialogue is delivered in a singy-songy way as well. And we have people singing while doing a lot of things that one wouldn't necessarily expect. Some of it unusual enough that I actually decided to quickly look into how this movie was made. Just from a practical point of view, and apparently most of this was sung live. Which is very surprising because that's not normally how musical movies like this are made. The songs are generally recorded in a studio and then the actors basically lip sync on screen. But not here apparently, and I can very much see this being a huge challenge to pull off. So kudos to everyone involved for doing a good job because it can't have been easy. Now, as I mentioned, Cotillard plays an opera singer and I also just mentioned that this is sung live. Which of course got me curious about her singing ability, and she does indeed sing in this. But I did find an actual opera singer in the credits for some of the songs here. So I'm guessing the more operatic parts weren't actually her doing, so there's still a little bit of movie magic going on here. But anyway, while I think the melodies here for the songs were actually really good, the lyrics on the other hand were just unbelievably banal. Oftentimes just clumsy dialogue, or a phrase or two that gets repeated over and over ad nauseum. And on a related note, I felt like most scenes just went on and on as well. And had this just kept it a little bit more concise, showed some restraint, I would have liked it a lot more. Because I don't actually mind the story here, it's strange for sure, but I found it to be surprisingly compelling. And definitely a unique take on some subjects I have seen explored before. But I'm not gonna lie, this one wasn't made for me, I don't think. It's a little bit too artsy for my taste. And even though it does come across as self-aware, I still found it to be a little bit pretentious and I'm not a huge fan of that. And it just made some very strange choices that I'm not entirely sure I'm fully on board with. Like the actual baby, Annette, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but that baby was something special. And while I think I see why they handled it the way they did, and it's undoubtedly a bold choice. One that I actually think paid off in the last scene, because what they did there was pretty clever and effective. And how they found a young girl who was capable of a performance like that, I have no idea. But yeah, regardless, I'm not sure I was fully on board with all of that. But that didn't really ruin it for me. I feel like what basically ruined this was the pacing, actually. And that just tipped the scale from being able to enjoy and appreciate the bizarre nature of the movie to being kind of bored by it at times and having trouble finding it in me to forgive its flaws. So yeah, it wasn't really for me, and I think I'm just gonna go ahead and give this one a low 5. Boop. And no, I wouldn't really recommend this to the average moviegoer. However, if you like more artsy and out there experimental films, maybe give this one a peek. Or, you could just skip it too. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic.